Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hashtag No Limits. I am your host, Shelly Kino. Hashtag No Limits is about limits that society has placed upon people, but those people have bust through those limits. As a special education teacher and as a master IEP coach and education consultant, I have seen this happen over and over again, and I am so proud and pleased that I can share these stories with you. The story that I am going to share, well, I'm not going to share, the story that I am happy to bring you today is a story that happened many years ago. This family is my family, and I'm so pleased to call them my family. Technically, by blood, they are my husband's family, but they have included me from the very first moment that I met them all, and that is how they have lived their entire lives. And their story is very wonderful and loving. I'm so excited to have Cousin Vicky on with me today. So, hi, Cousin Vicky. How are you?
I am fine. I'm
Good.
a bit of a mess, but I'm fine.
Okay.
Well, with you, Shelly.
Yeah. So, Vicky, you are the baby of the family. Right?
I am.
So tell us a little bit about your family and about your brothers.
I had one brother that was 10 years older than me named Charles Boots Shivitz. And I have another brother that currently lives in Florida that is 12 years older than me. And we lived in a very, very small town. I mean, small town, as you well know, about 150 people, maybe, I don't know, never counted them.
Right.
It was truly a rural, small town atmosphere with a family around us that supported us. And my 10-year older brother, Boots, got polio when he was 5 or 6, and then he contracted post-polio encephalitis a year and a half later that did additional damage to him. So that's where the special needs comes in. And he lived to be 37 years old. He passed away in 1978, and that's the background.
Yeah, so my husband had shared with me, and he has so many fond memories of Bootsy. So my first question regarding Bootsy is, how did he go from Charles to Bootsy? Where did that name come from?
Best I recall, my folks and Eddie is the older brother that lives in Florida, and Boots were somewhere. I think he maybe had polio at that time. He was walking in his braces, or he was in a wheelchair, and he proclaimed wherever they were that he didn't like the name Charles. And Dad asked him, this is how I remember it. Dad asked him, well, what do you want to be called? And he looked over and some guy was wearing cowboy boots. And he said, Boots. And he was known as Boots. I mean, I didn't even know his name was Charles for many years. As a baby, as a kid.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how he was Boots or Bootsy.
Yeah. And honestly, I've been in your family now for 30 years. And until we started preparing for this, I never knew what his real name was because, as I said, Kevin always referred to him as Bootsy or Boots.
Right.
So he's 10 years older than you. Oh, I forgot. I told you I was going to do that housekeeping stuff, and I always tend to forget it. So let me do the housekeeping. If you're watching from the Facebook group, No Limits, Changing the World's Perspective through IEPs, please give StreamYard permission. I've put the the link in the chat box so that you can just click on it and tell them it's okay for them to share your name and profile picture. They're doing that to protect your privacy because the Facebook group is a private group. So they're honoring your privacy. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit subscribe. If you're watching on in the Facebook page, please like it. Make sure that you like the page. Also, any comments help our viewership because the more people who comment, the more people Facebook will share the video with. And, you know, that's always my goal with the show is to, we're trying to change perspectives. We're trying to broaden people's views of the world. And so the more people have the opportunity to see this, the more opportunities are going to be had in order to change those. So, okay, sorry about that. I always forget that business side of things because I'm always so excited to just get in and have the stories told. So, so your brother was 10 when you were born. So by the time you were born, he already had polio. Sorry, I'm smiling because somebody just posted comment and I have a feeling I know who it is, but they didn't give permission to StreamYard, so I can't see who it is.
Yes, he already had polio. He was in 2 leg braces, a half a brace on one side and a full leg brace on the other side. Had to, because of severe scoliosis. He also had to wear a corset. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, and that was I think that entailed as he was growing up. I mean, I can remember back to 2.5, but prior to that, I have no memories, but I do remember 2.5.
Okay.
We would, one or the other or both of the parents and me thrown in the back seat, would take a trip to Warm Springs, Georgia to to be refitted for a new corset. And the corset came from chest height to right at the hip. So, so as he was growing, it had to be changed like every 6 months.
Right.
And in later years, he didn't wear it at all. But he also, from the post-polio encephalitis, just on the medical side of it, his speech was affected, and he also had grand mal seizures that were controlled by phenobarb pills and injections. And there was the cause of the seizures was never found out.
Oh, okay.
You just know, I'm sure it was from some neurological damage from the post-polio encephalitis.
Yeah.
And they had also had him to Mayo Clinic too, but that was where I was born. So my parents had taken him several places. One other caveat, I did not find out until 5 years ago that my oldest brother also had polio.
Really?
Uh-huh. Eddie
wow.
had, yeah, and I did not know that until, and I'm 70, so that was 5 years ago. So kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Evidently, there were no side effects with Eddie's. He had a much milder case, evidently.
Wow. Yeah. I mean,
yeah, but
that's
a very severe case of it.
Right. Well, this person also has not given permission to Facebook, but I bet you can figure out who it is. It says, say hi to Loretta for me and give her some pets for me. I'll also give you the hint that she's at college. Yeah. She wasn't sure if she was going to be able to watch today, so I'm glad to see that she was able to join in.
Good.
So, wow, that's really interesting about Eddie getting it too, and
it was never spoken about. I didn't know it.
Yeah. So, do you know if they got it at the same time?
No, I don't. I didn't ask. I mean, I was so
okay. Right. Sure.
When it came up, 50th wedding anniversary for Eddie and his wife Nancy.
Right.
And I was just stunned.
Wow.
So interesting. But that was in the 80s, you know, or whenever.
Yeah. Wow. And so you've said it, you're 70 years old. So when your brother contracted this, this would have been back in the like 1950s-ish, 1940.
Yeah, 50-ish. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and she did give permission, so she can say hi to you now. So at that time, there was, I mean, this show is, mostly about special education. So there was no special education opportunities, or at least I shouldn't say there wasn't any, but there was no law to
Oh no. Oh no. No. Everything was it was in our terms today, it was very crude. Education, medical services. I mean, you had to seek out medical services. And remember, when did the polio vaccine come in? 52, I think?
I don't know.
It was early 50s. The polio vaccine, I believe, came in to being. And so, I mean, it probably wasn't there when I was born.
Right.
But shortly thereafter, I'm sure. But education-wise, no. I remember Mother telling me that Boots did go to about 6 months of first grade school. And remember, I told you about the small town, so there was a one-room schoolhouse, and they had all the grades in one room.
Oh my gosh.
With
right.
One teacher. So Mom said that he went about 6 months, and then he contracted the post-polio encephalitis, and that ended the education. So I don't know if he could legitimately read or not. I have no idea. I just know that when I was aware of it, he always wanted his Bible open. And he was studying his Bible that's what he said.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, well, you wouldn't remember because you weren't born yet when he was only 6. So, do you know? So you said his speech was affected with the post encephalitis. So
polio encephalitis.
Yeah. So, so he had I guess he had good speech and was yeah. And so how badly was it affected? Was he able to speak at all after?
Yes, he could speak, but rarely full sentences and certain words, and sometimes a cuss word. Don't we all learn those?
Yeah, those are the words you don't want kids to pick up on, and they
right.
do. Like,
of course they do.
Yeah,
and
we
say it very clearly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it was severe speech.
So severe speech, and what did it do to him physically? I mean, you talked about the braces, so he was able to walk at some point for a while, at least.
For a while, he was able to walk with the full leg braces, and then it became too difficult with the leg braces, and we would still get him up and put him in the wheelchair with his corset on.
Mm-hmm.
And so he could sit up in the wheelchair. And then I would say probably when I was 10 or thereabouts, it became too difficult for him. So he was entirely bedridden. So his right side was paralyzed. His right side was entirely paralyzed.
Okay.
Now his left side he could still use. And he was mostly bedridden, and that's what your husband Kevin would remember, because he his bed and the position of the bed was right next to the kitchen, so he was always involved in whoever came over, because they always came over to see him, not necessarily to play with me or to help mom or whatever, but they would always come over to visit him, and they would sit at a corner where they could see both the kitchen and Boots and talk to Boots, and he had a TV for entertainment, and he liked his TV. He liked his westerns.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that was in the 70s. So yeah, that's
and yeah, 60s. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because Kevin wasn't born until 71. So
okay. So that, all right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember Kevin telling me many times, that first of all, that he thought Boots had a great sense of humor.
Oh, it was very twisted. He could speak least expected. Just to instigate things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably the reason that Kevin liked that sense of humor, because
yeah, knowing Kevin in his younger years, yes, that's probably true.
Yeah. Maybe we should stop talking about Boots and just talk about Kevin. No, I'm just kidding.
No, that's another episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Then that's a completely different show.
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah, so Violet says, so that's where Kevin gets it. Yeah, that's exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And he shared with me that he felt that your dad did a great job of instilling and growing that sense of humor. But when I mentioned that to you, you thought it was Big Unc that really worked up that sense of humor in him.
I don't remember. Well, Dad had a great sense of humor, and gosh, he worked hard. So did Mom. But all the Shivitz brothers had a pretty wicked sense of humor. So I'm not sure that Boots got it genetically and by behavior also.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about Boots and his personality and his struggles with the polio and everything. But you, as a sibling, you were I did have a guest on last week who has a brother with autism. And she is she is the older sibling. So her experience was a little bit different because, an older child having the parents all to themselves, and then I think she had a sister and then this brother. But your experiences are going to be vastly different because you were the younger sibling. So, and as we've mentioned many times, when you were born, he already had the polio and had the post-polio encephalitis. So what was it like for you growing up with somebody who had all of these needs?
I just didn't know any different. I credit Mom and Dad because they struggled to make sure that all three of us had as normal life as possible, I would say, given the severe circumstances of Boots's medical situation.
Right.
And but I just didn't know any different. I became more sensitive to it, I would say, probably in my much later years, probably when I was after he had passed, and I was about maybe 50 or 45, 50, something like that. And I was thinking about some things that I had missed or that were different than what I see in a normal family, whatever that is. But see, I didn't know any different. And you're right, My older brother absolutely had a different experience.
Yeah.
So
I mean, yeah,
I was the baby and I was the only girl. So that made a difference.
sure. Yeah. And that makes sense. So uh, I'm trying to think about um, vehicles, like we talked about the medical and the medical equipment. I imagine, so I need you to tell me if I'm wrong, that you probably didn't just pick up and go any place that you wanted to because he had his chair or he had his braces. And back then, they didn't build cars
There was
to,
nothing handicapped. No.
right.
My earliest memory is an Oldsmobile, a big boat of an Oldsmobile, and Dad would build a in the back seat on the floorboard. He would build a bench across the back seat and make a bed, and Boots would lay there, and then they'd pitch me in the back too.
Oh,
And,
okay.
right on the bed or whatever.
Right. Right.
God forbid there were no seatbelts then.
Well, yeah, there's that too.
Yeah, and that too. And then we progressed from a VW microbus when they first came out.
Okay.
And then he converted the back into a bed, which was really comfortable, actually. And then you had a middle seat and then the front seats. And then we went to a Greenbrier Chevy van. And then we went to a Winnebago, a very small Winnebago that gave us unbelievable relief because Dad could put Boots in the Winnebago and we could go wherever we wanted to go, for the most part.
Right.
And we progressed to a even bigger Winnebago.
Okay.
Last vehicle. But that had beds. That was really nice.
Right. Yeah. I think about the vehicles today, and there's equipment to help lift the chairs in. There's ramps. There's spots. And there are vans now. And I just saw it on. They were advertising for an airplane where they are now making space available for wheelchairs on airplanes. But even in vehicles now, you can some of the motorized wheelchairs, you can ride them up, and then there's a place where the wheels will lock and all those kind of extra safety features. And it does make going places, I would think, much more manageable.
More manageable, and it normalizes more things than you think.
Right. Right. So when you were going to school, I'm thinking about, like Violet or myself in school and how, we'd go hang out with our friends. I always tried to be the home that everybody wanted to come to. But yeah, I mean, she would go places. So you're shaking your head. What?
Yeah, I know where you're going. I would go to friends' houses. But by and large, everybody came to our house because Boots was there. And sometimes, well, for the most part, they always wanted to say hi to Boots, and they always wanted to mess with him and talk to him and yada, yada, yada. So everybody came to my house, and a lot of times, to our house, and a lot of times people would drop by, or my friends would drop by because they came by and they didn't even want to see me. They would say Boots. I mean, well, it was okay.
Yeah.
Because that was just the way it was. You always said hi to Boots.
Right. Well, and that's such a wonderful, inclusive setting without realizing that's what you were doing. And that's what I hinted at the beginning is your family has always welcomed any of us outsiders in as if we were part of the flock the whole time.
Well, I think that was their philosophy, inclusion.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, I mean, from what Kevin has told me, that was definitely, he never he also never thought about Boots as disabled or,
No.
he was Boots.
Mhm.
This is who Boots is. Because by the time, like I said, Kevin wasn't born until 71. So, Boots was in his 30s by that point, or just maybe turned 30. And, so this is who we are. And we're not going to get into the Kevin stories, but Kevin was with your parents at your parents' house a lot, from my understanding of his childhood.
Yes. Yes. We'll just leave it like that. Yes, he was.
Oh goodness, if you all knew the reason I am laughing so much at the way she said that. As I said, we could have a whole nother show about my husband's childhood.
But
he's an absolutely amazing adult. Please don't misunderstand, but he is.
You would never in a million years believe how Kevin turned out, her husband. So
yeah,
just leave it like that.
Yeah, but your parents
started,
huh?
Compared to the way he started.
Well, and my understanding is that your family had a lot to do with that. A lot to do with his changing from the mischievous little boy that he really was, from the stories I've heard, to this person that he is today, because of, just like I said, just that inclusiveness, that structure.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding was your parents could get him to do some things that maybe my mother-in-law couldn't always get him to do. But there were other people, and I don't know this, but I know there's been many other names mentioned throughout my time of knowing your family, like of other people in the family. Did you ever have other people that lived with you, or was it just that everybody was so close?
No. Mom and Dad took in, let's see, Aunt Jenny, my grandma, my mom's mom. They lived with us. Ma lived with us for 5 years, 6 years, as well as Boots.
Okay.
Broke her hip. And until she passed away. And Pappy's wife, Aunt Lil, lived with us. And it wasn't unusual for us to take other people in. Yeah.
Right. And yeah, so your mom was just very nurturing and very loving and very caring and an excellent cook. And yes, she is. And there's a reason that our daughter is named after your mom, because of all of those wonderful qualities and all of the things that she did for Kevin growing up. I mean, he's always, and I do too. I was so blessed to have, 20 years of knowing your mom before she passed. And, she was a very wonderful woman. And I think it speaks volumes to her and your dad. I didn't have the chance to meet your dad, but of all the wonderful memories that everybody has of your family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, and the fact that, friends would want to come over and family would stop by and, like I said, Boots was Boots.
They bring him things and, if they, something about cowboys or something, they would bring him that or whatever. Yeah.
Right. Oh, bye, Violet. We love you too. She's got to go. She's got a meeting she has to prepare for, she said. So, but when you were talking about Kevin and his upbringing, she said she's so sorry.
I'm so sorry. No, you don't have to be sorry. Your daddy's amazing. So
yeah, he really is. But it's good that he has those stories, because that gives people hope. Your child can just be driving you crazy today, but as an adult, they could possibly become this amazing person who's a pillar of society and who, lots of people look up to. So to any parents listening and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I mean, they didn't
What
label
is
kids.
wrong with her husband?
Yeah, they didn't label kids when my husband was younger as emotionally disturbed, but he might have had that label based on the behaviors that I've heard from him.
My mother would probably label it differently, but that's okay.
He was very strong-willed. He's still strong-willed today, but in a much better way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have a strong-willed child, don't despair too much. Yeah, you have to get through the child rearing years, but that strong will, and my daughter is one who also has a strong will, and they can do great things once they learn how to manage that strong will.
Well, he managed to absorb the inclusiveness and the tolerance.
Yes.
He managed, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So you've said that as you were looking back as an adult, there are some things that you, and I think we're all like this, but now that you look back at your life growing up and what your parents went through and did and had to do in a lot of cases, how has your perspective changed about your childhood and your upbringing, or has it?
Well, some. I realize that none of us are perfect, and we all need to be tolerant because you know the background of other people.
Right.
By the same token, in my later years, I'm talking about, when we went down to Warm Springs, Georgia, and Dad put in the heating and cooling for the little White House, FDR's little White House, blah, 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 blah. I'm thinking that was normal for me to hear.
Right.
Like that. And I remember Warm Springs, and I remember being down there. We would go down at least once a year. Warm Springs, Georgia Foundation. And he would get therapy and or whatever. And we also had a good friend that had polio, and her husband was the head physical therapist down at the Warm Springs Foundation for years.
Okay.
FDR was there when Franklin Roosevelt was there.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so it's like, who has that kind of history to talk about? Right. So that was normal. Oh, okay, we're going to Georgia. Okay.
Right. Yeah, we're going to go see the president.
Yeah, yeah, whatever. Dad's going to do some work or what, whatever. But
right.
So, but I do realize that some things were missed when your mother-in-law and your Kevin's dad to New Memphis. That freed up Mom and Dad somewhat because they would sit with Boots oftentimes.
Okay.
One or the other, or both of them, but usually one or the other. And they would sit with Boots, and that was an opportunity for Mom and Dad to go somewhere as a couple, which was extremely rare.
Right.
Because all the celebrations and all the parties were at our house.
Right.
So that, I look back on those things and it's a lot of history.
Yeah. And that's interesting because even today, in today's world, with all of the knowledge that we have about different disabilities and different, all the different medical things and all the different accommodations that society has embraced, parents with children with unique abilities are still isolated. They're still feeling like there isn't anybody that can or will watch their child for them when they want to go someplace. Or, I think about, he was 36 or 37 when he passed away.
37.
And that was still full-time care that your parents were providing him from, the time he was 6 until then.
Yes.
And in my book, Those Who Can't Teach, which I happen to have a copy of it, that there were families that are still facing those situations, and they're still scared to ask people to stay with their child, because that's you're literally putting your child's life in someone else's hands.
Correct.
And while that's daunting from the acceptor of that, because I've had that experience before, it's really a beautiful thing that the trust that the parents of the child have with whoever it is that they are granting that privilege to.
No question. But be careful of the isolation.
Yeah.
And don't think that you can't include people, because you can.
Right. And I think from the stories that I've heard, your family was great at including and having, okay, so maybe they couldn't go everywhere, but they had people come to them.
Correct.
And they made sure that, Boots was part of everything as much as possible.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, oh, there's Loretta.
Can I take a 30-second break?
Absolutely.
Okay, I am very, very sorry.
No, that's okay. That's totally okay. Yep, Loretta is her beautiful and amazing German Shepherd that is very well trained, very loved, very spoiled. But yeah, she was napping, so she's awake now apparently, and she's ready to go outside and take her little break. So for those of you during this little bit of a commercial break, so to speak, if you're watching, please let me know in the comments. Let me know, hashtag live or hashtag replay if you're watching this on the replay. And again, make sure that you give Facebook permission if you are in the group, that they can post your Facebook profile picture and name. If you like this, make sure to like it, subscribe to the YouTube channel. The more we can get these kinds of things out there, the better our entire world will be, because there are so many wonderful people that are being excluded because of their abilities. And we're missing out on a lot. So you got Loretta all taken care of?
I did.
Okay, good.
She's calm now. For the moment, sorry.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's okay. That's the great thing about this show. It's very casual, and yeah, you're not getting any special treatment just because you're my cousin or my husband's cousin or whatever. But yeah, I know I've my show that I do on Fridays, Fran has a dog and a cat that often appear and join the entire show.
Okay.
So, yeah. So it's all good. It's all good. So yeah, we were talking about the inclusive environment that your parents and your family had designed, and how, bringing everyone to you to help combat that isolation feeling. And your friends, one of the families that's in the book had the child had 3 older siblings, and they were the same way. Their friends came to their house to hang out. The friends knew the youngest sibling as much as they did the friend of, whichever older sibling was their friend that they were coming to hang out with. And yeah, I mean, I wish that was the case for everybody, whether they have older siblings or not. We're
and it's not sometimes. It's just not.
Yeah.
But the more you that would be probably some of the wisdom that I could leave you, and that would be that I could tell your listeners. Oh dear. My parents were really good about teaching tolerance and joy, and they educated people through their example.
Right. Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Don't be afraid to do it, and we're all different.
Absolutely.
So it's just a matter of how different we are.
Right. Right. That's why I like to try to focus on the abilities, and not call it disabilities, because every one of us, every one of us has abilities that are different than everyone else. And every one of us is unique in our own unique way, whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so thankful for that, because imagine how boring life would be if everyone were like you or everyone were like me. Think of right.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, think of all the things that would not have been invented if it had been like everybody was the same.
Correct. Good focus, Shelley, on abilities.
Yeah. Well, and that's what it is. I don't like to use the word disability to talk about my guests' situations or family members or whatever it is, because to me, the definition of that is it can't do. And, again, going back to the title of my book, I learned so much from my students that I taught and their families that welcomed me in.
Mm-hmm.
That why would I not want to have that opportunity? Why would I not want to share that with as many people as I could? That would be extremely selfish of me.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, maybe somebody doesn't read as quickly or comprehend as well, or doesn't understand math as well, or doesn't write as well, or doesn't have the physical abilities to the level that other people have. But so what? Why do we look at that as a negative?
They're just minor limitations.
Mm-hmm.
Really is what they are. So you would around them.
Yeah. Well, I know you had some notes, and I want to make sure, we've still got plenty of time, but I want to make sure that we've covered anything that you had wanted to cover. Because I never like to leave without giving that opportunity.
No, I've covered everything. That's good.
Okay.
Put down my list. That's
well, good. That's why I like to sit down with the guests ahead of time and just, talk a little bit about things that we'll talk about. So I'm just curious, like, what would be some favorite stories that you could share about your brother Boots?
Well, I have to not include my favorite one, and it had to do with cowboy boots, by the way, but I can't share that. I
don't know if. Go ahead.
There. Oh, I can share one with you, and it illustrates how you adapt to certain situations.
Okay.
I was probably about 8 or 9 years old, and Boots's room. At that time, we didn't have a portable television in his room. It was still too new. We had a television in the living room, which was 2 rooms away.
Right.
And Mom was outside working in the garden or something, and she said to me, Boots said to me, "Want to watch television? TV." And I thought, well, how am I going to get him in there?
Right.
Because Dad mostly carried him everywhere. Picked him up and would carry him. And so I put a blanket on the floor and I said, "Get down on the blanket, Boots." And he said, "I can't." And so I had to swing his legs over and I rolled him out of bed onto the blanket and drug him on the blanket to watch television. And Mom came back in and she said, "What are you two doing?" Boots just looked at her and said, "Watching TV."
Yeah.
That was the end of it.
Yeah.
And he kind of laughed about it. Another story, he used to like to instigate people if they were worked up or irritated about something.
Uh-huh.
So he
definitely Kevin got that trait.
So my grandpa, Pappy, known as Pappy, would always come and sit and visit with him. And sometimes when he'd get in a fight, verbal fight with Aunt Will, his wife, "That woman," that's not exactly his words, but "that woman," and he'd be sitting there and Boots would say, "Are you mad, Pappy?" And then Pappy'd go on and on and on and on. And, Mom was in the kitchen, so she could hear him, and she just knew what he was doing. He was exciting my grandpa to keep going.
Right.
Be more infuriated. And he would just shake his head, and he'd put his head down, and his shoulders would shake. Pappy all worked up. So that was part of his humor and the part that explains Kevin, actually, your husband. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And Kevin would talk about, we'd go over to Aunt Ryan's and I'd climb up in the bed with Boots and his brother Brian would climb up in the bed and they would, just play games and so let's describe that bed a little bit because, when I think somebody's in a bed at a home, in a home setting or any bed, actually, I'm thinking of, one that's got a box spring and then it sits up. So, so let's describe
low to the ground. It was very low to the ground, about, maybe 12 inches or so. It was on a frame and it was not high at all.
Right. And was it just a twin bed or I'm guessing it has to be It was twin, but even at a twin, the boys were able to get into the bed with him and sit and talk.
That was not unusual. Actually, Eddie's younger daughter used to do it too when they'd come out.
Okay.
They would come out and they just automatically crawl up and lay next to him or sit next to him and swing their legs and play games or have cards or something. And, kids don't play card games.
Right.
You know how they do. So, they would do stuff like that, or they'd read out of the Bible to him. Couldn't read, but for the most part,
Right. Yeah.
Or if he were eating, they'd take over feeding him and they'd pat him on the head and then they'd shove some food in his mouth and then they'd pat him on the head and shove some more oatmeal in his mouth. And it was just a normal process. So there were, Brian was the same way, Kevin's older brother. They were all used to climbing on the bed, almost on him.
Right.
and doing whatever they wanted to do. Yeah.
Right. So we do have a question from Jane. Hi, Jane. And along with Boots' sense of humor, and his ability to instigate people's anger. What other abilities did he have? She was asking.
He was extremely perceptive about people's personalities. If he didn't like someone that came into the house, he would put his head down and not talk.
Oh.
At all. And they would all think, oh, Boots is sleeping. Boots is sleeping. Wouldn't move.
Wow.
And go in and check to make sure that he was breathing.
Right.
Because he wasn't about to talk to whomever he didn't want him to sit down by him even. He didn't care for him.
Wow.
Uh-huh.
So, did you ever bring any boys home? Well, let's see. No, yeah, you would have been old enough to be bringing boys home. But did he have anybody that he didn't like that you brought home? Or maybe should I say, how many did you bring home that he didn't like?
No, the one that I did bring home that he probably didn't like, but he wanted to mess with me on, and he would make fun of him. And I'm not. Oh yeah. After he was gone,
Uh-huh.
he'd make fun of him, and then he'd just laugh and put his face down.
Yeah.
In the bed. On his lap, like this.
Oh, that is so funny.
Yeah. Yeah, he was an amazing judge of character.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome.
So I will tell you the one story about the cowboy boots, however. Not from his name, but I'll tell you, and I'll leave out the word.
Okay.
Didn't say. We were traveling in to Georgia somewhere down south, going to the Warm Springs Foundation or something like that. And we stopped for gas, and I believe we were in the VW bus. So that bed was high up when you stopped for gas. And in the old days, they actually had attendants that came out and pumped your gas.
Right.
And Boots would raise up and he looked out the window and he'd look down at the guy pumping gas, and then he'd lay down like this and you could see his shoulders shake. And Dad didn't say anything. So the guy got done and we pulled over to the side, over on the side, and parked for a minute to rearrange stuff or whatever. And I remember Pop coming back and saying, Boots, what is so funny? And very clearly, in a full sentence, he said, 40 years a cowboy and never stepped in. I don't know what amused him about the guy, but the guy, 40 years a cowboy and never stepped in.
He learned that on one of those Westerns that he watched.
It could have been. It could have been. Easily could have been.
Oh, that is funny. Yeah.
So that's the real Boots.
Yeah. And that's the Boots that I heard the stories about. And
right.
yeah, and I've actually heard that story before, and several others that made me sad that I never got to meet him.
Yeah, wicked sense of humor. Wicked.
Yeah, that's so awesome. That's so wonderful. Well, Jane, do you have any more questions? Or anybody else? I know Violet left. I don't know who's watching right now. We had somebody earlier type in a Bruno curbsider, which I presume is a type of car, because it's when we were talking about the different vehicles that you'd had, and that popped up then. So I'm thinking that maybe somebody had a type of car like that. But I so appreciate that you came on today and shared about Boots. Like I said, I've been in the family for 30 years now and have wondered about him. I've heard a lot of stories, but didn't know a lot of the stuff that you shared today. And I'm so grateful that you came on and shared. It's a lift. The Bruno curbsider is a lift. It's what somebody just typed in. And so, yeah, is there any advice? Is there any words of encouragement or anything that you would like to leave our guests, our viewers with that you haven't already said?
No, really not. Just embrace it. And Include people. Don't exclude.
Yeah.
And everybody does the best they can.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's beautiful. Include, not exclude. And I've said this on this show before and on my show with Fran on Fridays, that don't make excuses for people. Invite them and give them the opportunity to say no.
Correct.
Yeah.
Good idea, Shelley.
Yeah.
You.
Do you, Jane, man. All right. Do you feel guilty about anything regarding Boots? Man, she's zinging you.
Well,
that's what best friends are for, though, right?
Best friends are for. Besties are good at. No, I can't say no.
That's good.
No, I had a good life growing up. Really did.
Yeah.
No, nothing.
And if I were to talk to older siblings, like I said, like my guest last week, her experience was different because she had been around before the brother came around. And, I'm sure if you asked my brother, he'd be like, oh yeah, I wish, I have all kinds of regrets about my sister because she's my sister. And, he was an only child for almost 5 years. So he had all of mom and dad's attention, and, he was king of the hill. And then here I come along, and, all the, I'm sure, I would think almost all older siblings would feel that way. And then, yeah, you have a very different viewpoint being a younger sibling because you don't know any different. There is no before and after. It's just now.
It's the way it is.
Right.
It was,
Yeah. Yep. I don't know what Jane means by one, but you can ask her that later. Because it's just the number one. So I don't know if she thinks that you have something you feel guilty about that you're not sharing.
No. Not really.
Like I said, you can take that up with her, with your best friend, when the show is over.
I will do that.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Fran and Violet and Jane, and I don't know if anybody else joined. There's a couple other Facebook users is all it says, so I don't know who those are specifically. But thank you all for joining today. As I said, you can get my book, Those Who Can't Teach, and hear more stories that are kind of like Vicky's. They're all true stories of families who were told they can't, and yet they were able to prove those thoughts wrong. If you are watching and you would like a free IEP checklist, you can go to my website, shelleykino.com, and fill out the little form, and you'll get instantly a checklist for IEP meetings. There's also a social story there. And again, make sure you like this video, you share this video, you subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and we will see you back next week. Let's see. Yeah, next week I am interviewing another master IEP coach. Her name is Jessica. And she's had some major life changes in the last year that she is going to be sharing with you. And then Friday with Fran, right here, 1 o'clock on Friday. So everybody have a great week. Vicki, I love you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.